Sade Carleena Robinson was 19 years old, working 2 jobs, and finishing up a degree in criminal justice when she decided to go out on a date on April 1st, 2024. But little did she know, that date would turn out to be her last. Before going, she told a friend how excited she was for that night. But by the next morning, that excitement had turned into a nightmare her family is still living through to this day. Sade's car was found burning behind an abandoned building, 3 miles from the home she had worked so hard to get for herself. Separately that same day, someone walking through a Milwaukee County park found part of her body washed up along the shore. Over the weeks that followed, more of Sade would be recovered in scattered locations across 2 states. She was a daughter, a sister, and a student who was building a future for herself. This is her story. Sade grew up in Milwaukee, the daughter of Sheena Scarborough and Carlos Robinson, and the older sister of Adriana Reams. By the spring of 2024, she was in her final semester at Milwaukee Area Technical College, closing in on an associate's degree in criminal justice, with plans to eventually join the military. People who knew her described her as someone who liked doing things her own way. She had taken solo trips to places like Jamaica, New Orleans, and Atlanta, and she worked 2 jobs at once to help fund the independent life she was building for herself. One of those jobs was at Pizza Shuttle. The other one was at the Wisconsin Country Club, where she worked alongside her sister, Adriana. And that is the picture people paint of Sade Robinson before April of 2024. A young woman working hard and looking forward to what came next. Maxwell Anderson was 33 years old at the time, and he had spent most of his life in Waukesha County. He joined the United States Navy in April of 2011, but his time in the service lasted less than a year, ending that following January for reasons that were never made public. After leaving the Navy, Anderson worked as a bartender at a handful of spots around Milwaukee, including Victor's downtown and the Twisted Fisherman, the same seafood restaurant where he would later take Sade. He also had a criminal record before any of this happened. Between 2014 and 2019, he picked up misdemeanor convictions across 3 separate cases, including disorderly conduct, a first drunk driving offense, and charges tied to property damage and threats against relatives in Waukesha County. Surveillance footage from March 29th showed Sade and Anderson leaving Victor's bar together, a few days before the night everyone would come to know as their first date. At 4:15 on the afternoon of April 1st, Sade texted Anderson, and the two made plans to meet up that night. They started at the Twisted Fisherman, the seafood restaurant where Anderson used to work. From there, they drove in Sade's car to Duke's on Water, which is a bar. Around 6:30 p.m., Sade sent a Snapchat to a friend from inside the bar, and the two left a little after 9 o'clock. Surveillance footage and phone location data later placed the pair at Anderson's home, arriving around 9:24 that night. In the early morning hours of April 2nd, investigators say Sade's phone left that address and began moving through different parts of Milwaukee County. It traveled first to Pleasant Valley Park along the Milwaukee River, then to Warnemont Park, arriving there around 2:45 in the morning. A little later that morning, a friend who couldn't reach Sade called police to report her missing, and her co-workers at Pizza Shuttle grew worried when she never showed up for her shift. That same day, someone walking through Warnemont Park found a severed human leg. They called the police, but investigators didn't know right away whose remains they had found. It took preliminary DNA testing to confirm the leg belonged to Sade.
Investigation is underway after a bizarre discovery Tuesday evening in southern Wisconsin. Investigators say that a park goer spotted a severed leg. This happened in a park in Cudahy. The Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office says that the leg was found in or near the water, and the discovery prompted countless questions for those who wanted to stop by at the park.
Over the following weeks, more of Sade's remains surfaced in different locations, some around Milwaukee and others as far away as Illinois. Investigators also recovered Sade's car, abandoned and set on fire behind a building roughly 3 miles from her apartment. At first, responders didn't treat an empty burned-out car as an emergency, but a fire investigator noticed the passenger side smelled strongly of petroleum distillate. That detail told them the fire had been set deliberately. Investigators also found Sade's purse tucked underneath the driver's seat of her burned-out car, which ruled out robbery as a motive, and the clothes she was last seen wearing were found in the trunk. They also noticed that the driver's seat had been adjusted in a way that didn't match how Sade normally drove. It was way too far back for someone of her height to realistically drive. And that detail, along with everything else, became one of the several clues connecting Anderson to her death. Investigators rebuilt Sade's final hours using a mix of cell phone data and security footage from businesses along the route she took that night. One key piece of evidence came from a Milwaukee County Transit bus that happened to pass the spot where Sade's car was on fire. Surveillance video from that bus showed a man matching Anderson's build walking away from the burning car with a large backpack, then boarding a bus a short time later. Detectives later placed that same man at a bus stop near Anderson's neighborhood, but the backpack and the clothes he was wearing in that footage were never recovered. But even without finding the backpack and the clothes, investigators felt they had enough evidence to make an arrest.
Answers and some closure in a gruesome murder mystery that's gripped the Milwaukee area for more than a week now. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jessa Brycebeck.
And I'm Amanda Porterfield. This morning, Maxwell Anderson was charged with murdering and dismembering 19-year-old Sade Robinson. The charges link two stories we've been covering for more than a week: the missing woman, Robinson, and body parts discovered in several locations throughout the city and county. Prosecutors now say at least two of those body parts are Sade Robinson's, and officers are looking for more of them.
So on April 12, 2024, 10 days after Sade was initially reported missing, Maxwell Anderson was formally charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, and arson of property other than a building. Anderson pleaded not guilty, and the case moved forward to trial, which finally began on May 27, 2025, more than a year after Sade's death. Over nearly 2 weeks, prosecutors walked the jury through the timeline of that night, the phone and location data, their surveillance footage, and the forensic evidence tying Anderson to Sade's death and the disposal of her remains. Anderson's defense argued he wasn't responsible, and he turned down any plea deal, saying he wanted the case to go to trial so he could prove his innocence. And on June 6, 2025, a jury of 9 women and 3 men found Anderson guilty on all counts.
As to count 1, the verdict reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 1 of the information." As to count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of mutilating a corpse as charged in count 2 of the information. As to count 3, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of arson of property other than a building as charged in count 3 of the information. As to count 4, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of hiding a corpse as charged in count 4 of the information.
Anderson was sentenced on August 1st, 2025. Under Wisconsin law, first-degree intentional homicide carries a mandatory life sentence. So the real question for Judge Laura Crivello was whether Anderson would ever be eligible for parole. His attorney, of course, argued for eligibility after 25 years, pointing to Anderson's time in the Navy and citing mental health struggles. Judge Crivello, however, rejected that request and handed down the maximum sentence on every count, meaning Anderson is serving life without the possibility of parole or extended supervision. She said she saw no accountability from him throughout the trial and did not believe he had taken any responsibility for what happened. During the hearing, Anderson addressed the court directly and maintained his innocence, telling the judge he had not committed the crimes and that this was exactly why he had taken the case to trial. Sade's family also spoke at the hearing, describing how the case had affected them and asking Anderson to reveal what happened to the parts of Sade's remains that were never found. A few days after sentencing, Anderson began the process of appealing his conviction, although his trial attorney said someone else would be handling that appeal. In October of 2025, Anderson was ordered to pay just under $93,000 in restitution, split between Sade's family and the state's victim compensation program to help cover funeral and related costs. Anderson appeared by video for that hearing from an out-of-state facility and asked to delay payment until his appeal was resolved, but the judge denied that request and finalized the order that same day. Separate from the criminal case, Sade's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Anderson back in June of 2024, while the criminal case was still in its early stages. That lawsuit is still active today. At one point, the family also sued the 2 bars Sade and Anderson visited that night, arguing her intoxication made her more vulnerable, but that particular suit was later dismissed. Anderson's father was named in the wrongful death suit at one point as well, but he was dismissed from it without prejudice in August of 2025. As recently as June of this year, the case is still moving through pretrial proceedings, with Anderson appearing by video from the facility where he's being held. Sade's mother has continued attending these hearings and has been vocal about how drawn out the process has felt, including frustration over not being told where Anderson had been transferred to. As it stands today, Maxwell Anderson is serving life in prison without the possibility of parole for Sade Robinson's murder, His restitution has been ordered and finalized, but his criminal appeal is still pending, and the wrongful death lawsuit filed by Sade's family remains active in civil court. Earlier this year, the case also drew renewed national attention when CBS's 48 Hours aired an episode covering the investigation and trial in detail, and I'll have that linked in the description down below if you want to check that out. But for Sade's family, this case is far from over. They're still waiting on answers about remains that were never recovered, including Sade's head. They're still working through the civil court process and still showing up to every hearing they are allowed to attend. But at the center of all of this is still Sade, a young woman who deserves so much more time than she actually got. But that'll be the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about this. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more videos like this. Other than that, again, thank you so much for watching, and like always, I'll see you next video.